Okay, so the same people who told you they would never touch Social Security, the ones who looked right into the camera and said your benefits are safe, they just gutted the agency that sends the checks. Over 7,000 workers pushed out, field offices closing, seniors showing up to lock doors, and while all of that is happening, DOJ staffers were walking around with the Social Security numbers of 300 million Americans on the thumb drive. So this past week, the Senate Budget Committee held a hearing on Social Security. Senator Patty Murray, Democrat from Washington, used her time to lay out what is actually happening at the SSA right now: the staffing collapse, the data breaches, the seniors getting wrongfully declared dead, and then she brought in a budget expert to expose the math on who actually pays into the system and who doesn't. So watch this clip. Watch Murray walk through the numbers. Watch how she connects DOJ so-called efficiency to the real-world chaos seniors are living through right now. And pay close attention to the billionaire tax breakdown at the end, because that math is going to make your head spin. This clip's about 5 minutes. Pay close attention because after this, I'm going to walk you through every receipt, every number, and every contradiction they don't want you to see. If you're not subscribed, hit that button now so you don't miss the breakdown. Let's get into it.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We absolutely do need to talk about how we protect Social Security, but in addition to the long-term solvency that people are focusing on here, I don't think we can ignore the immediate threat to Social Security, and that really is President Trump, because seniors right now today are having a very hard time getting their benefits. Why? Because Social Security has pushed out, without any kind of plan, 7,700 workers since Trump took office. We now have just one field office representative per 4,000 Social Security beneficiaries, and there are at least 400 field offices that lost more than 25% of their staff. And that's just the beginning. The Trump administration wants to cut field office visits in half. That would mean over 15 million people who were able to go to a desk and speak to a person last year would be out of luck this year. This is really a slow-moving train wreck. Last summer, the Social Security Administration moved 1,000 field office employees to the phone lines. At the end of the year, it moved 500 more. In January, it moved nearly 800 more employees from the processing centers and the field office support and workload support to phone duty, often with very little training. That's trying to fix one problem they created, worsening telephone service, by creating new problems and backlogs everywhere. This is really hurting seniors who can no longer get an SSA meeting close to home when they need it. It is hurting people with disabilities, as people who could be processing their claims are now answering phones, and it's burning out the hardworking staff Trump hasn't pushed out. But this is all the tip of the iceberg when it comes to Trump's Social Security sabotage, because there was the attempt to punish a state by revoking contracts to report births and deaths, and there was a proposal to end many of the phone services, an idea that was quickly reversed because it was so bad. And then there was the DOJ purge, which wrongly kicked seniors off Social Security, including a constituent of mine they incorrectly declared as dead. And mind you, that's just the sabotage in the light of day. But thanks to a whistleblower report and ongoing internal investigations, we know there was even more damage happening in the shadows, like when Trump let Elon and DOJ muck around with highly sensitive Social Security data that is private, personally identifiable information on hundreds of millions of Americans. We are talking about potentially unprecedented data breaches here, blatantly unqualified people getting practically unfettered access even after court orders, private data copied onto unauthorized third-party servers, or, according to reports, even copied onto a thumb drive. Believe me, I want everyone to know I'm watching this investigation closely and demanding accountability. If we want to protect Social Security for decades to come, yes, we do need to talk about solvency, but we also need to talk about the president who is gutting the Social Security Administration right now, today, and callously putting our seniors' benefits and their personal data at risk. Now, with that, Dr. Dahl, I want to turn to you. I do have a few questions, particularly about who is and isn't paying their fair share into Social Security, and I want to make sure I have a few numbers right. Is it right that those making under $184,500, their effective payroll tax rate is roughly 12.4%?
That's right. The statutory rate is 6.2%, but consensus view is that the employee pays, basically the employer cost is passed on to the employee, and so the employee basically faces a rate of 12.4%.
Well, for anybody earning $104,500. What is the effective payroll tax for someone making $1 million a year?
So they would pay the 12.4% on that first $185,000 roughly, and then would not pay additional tax on labor income above that amount, and so that math would work out to about 2.2%.
Okay, so 12.4% for someone under 184.5. A millionaire would be about 2.2. What if you're a billionaire like Trump or Musk? Your Social Security tax would be effectively, on my understanding,
Very, very much smaller.
0.0002.
Yes.
That just doesn't make sense to me. And when the richest people in the country have the smallest effective tax rate, that does not seem to me like a very fair system, especially when we are now 6 years away from retired workers facing this 24% cut in their Social Security benefits. So I hope we all understand that and focus on that. Thank you.
All right, so let's talk about what you just watched. Because Murray just laid out something that should be front page news in every city in America, and somehow it's barely getting covered. The Social Security Administration has lost over 7,700 employees since Trump took office. According to the Center on Budget and Policy Priorities, that is the single largest staffing cut in the agency's 90-year history. And there was no plan, no transition, no backup. They just fired people and hoped the phones would answer themselves. And here's what that looks like on the ground. According to AFGG, the union representing SSA workers, there is now one field office representative for every 1,480 beneficiaries. That's over 3 times the ratio from 1967. The CBPP projects nearly 2 million additional in-person visits per year because they killed the phone services. And the new SSA commissioner, Frank Bisignano, was asked what his plan was to fix the staffing crisis. His answer? Technology for an 82-year-old who can't turn on a computer. Technology, truly helpful stuff. Now here's where it gets really dark. Murray brought up the data breaches, and this is not some hypothetical risk. This already happened. According to NPR reporting from March 2026, the SSA's own Inspector General is investigating a whistleblower complaint that a former Doge software engineer claimed to have retained copies of 2 databases, the Numbedin file and the Deathmaster file, containing the personal information of over 500 million living and dead Americans, on a thumb drive. And this isn't one rogue employee. According to court filings from January 2026, the Trump administration admitted that Doge employees shared Social Security data on an unauthorized Cloudflare server, in violation of a federal judge's restraining order. The SSA's former chief data officer, Chuck Borges, called it, and I quote, an irrecoverable loss. He said it could require a complete redesign of how identity works in the United States. Think about that for a second. The people who said they were going to find the fraud may have just created the largest data breach in American history. And then there's the dead people problem, except they're not actually dead. Murray highlighted the case of Ned Johnson, an 82-year-old man in Seattle who woke up one morning and found out the SSA had declared him deceased. His benefits stopped. His Medicare got canceled. His credit score was zeroed out. He spent 8 hours in a federal building trying to prove he was alive. And according to the CBPP, the Trump administration has since begun knowingly adding living people to the Deathmaster file to cut off their benefits, including children as young as 13. So let me get this straight. They told you there were millions of dead people collecting checks. That was the justification. Find the fraud, save the money. And instead, they're marking living people as dead, cutting off their benefits, and calling it efficiency. An 82-year-old veteran had to prove he was alive because Doge decided to do a database purge with no safeguards. Former Commissioner Martin O'Malley said at a town hall of 200 people, 2 raised their hands and said they knew someone who'd been wrongfully declared dead. That's not a rounding error. That's a pattern. And then Murray hit the numbers that nobody in that room wanted to talk about. She brought in Dr. Molly Dahl to break down the Social Security payroll tax. And here's the math. The tax rate is 12.4%, split between you and your employer. But it only applies to the first $184,500 of income. That's the cap. Everything above that, exempt. So if you make $60,000 a year, you're paying the full 12.4% on every dollar. If you make $1 million, you stop paying into Social Security on March 9th. That's 68 days into the year. And for billionaires, According to labor economist Teresa Ghilarducci's estimates, Elon Musk, the man who called Social Security the biggest Ponzi scheme of all time, may have paid all of his Social Security taxes for the year on January 1st, New Year's Day. The same guy who gutted the agency, fired 7,000 workers, and put your data on a cloud server contributes effectively 0.0002% of his income to the system. Meanwhile, a nurse, a teacher, a trucker, they pay the full rate on every single paycheck for the entire year. That's not a tax system. That's a joke with a punchline that only billionaires laugh at. And here's the part that should make everyone stop and think. Social Security's trust fund is projected to run short by 2033. If Congress does nothing, benefits get cut by roughly 24%. That means seniors who paid in their whole lives could lose nearly a quarter of their income. But according to the SSA's own actuaries, if you simply removed the payroll tax cap and taxed all earnings, you'd close 67% of the funding gap. No benefit cuts, no age increases. Just ask the people making $10 million a year to pay the same rate as the people making $60,000. But that's not what's happening. Instead of fixing the math, they're breaking the agency. Senator Wyden called it a first step toward privatization. Former Commissioner O'Malley said at this rate they will break it fast. And Trump's own Treasury Secretary, Scott Bessent, described the administration's savings accounts proposal as, and this is a direct quote, a backdoor for privatizing Social Security. They're saying the quiet part out loud and hoping you're too distracted to hear it. So here's where we are. 7,700 workers gone. Staffing at a 60-year low. Field offices shutting down. Seniors declared dead while they're still breathing. The personal data of every American potentially compromised on an unauthorized thumb drive. And the people responsible for all of this pay less into Social Security by January 2nd than you do all year. This is not about efficiency. This was never about efficiency. You don't make something more efficient by firing the people who run it, locking the doors, handing the data to unvetted tech workers, and then telling 82-year-olds to go online to prove they're alive. That's not reform, that's demolition. And the only question left is whether you're going to let them finish the job. So here's the line. Next time someone tells you Social Security is going broke and there's nothing we can do, here's what you tell them. The program isn't going broke. It's being broken on purpose by people who pay almost nothing into it and want you to believe it was broken all along. That's the whole game. That's it. Anyway, if this helped you see what's actually going on, hit the like, subscribe, share it with someone who needs to hear the math. I'll see you in the next one.